All right, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate
Absolutely.
being
We'll start out where everyone else does, as far as earliest childhood memories. What are we getting into?
Yeah, I mean, my life has been pretty intense from the start. So I actually, there's a few memories, there's a few memories where I'm like, there's kind of a mix up of timeline. So I don't know exactly what is my like
Yeah,
first memory.
I can't fact check you, so whatever you say, I'm with you.
That's true. Yeah, you can't be like, I was there, I remember, unless you're like a really good stalker, which would be flattering. I would say maybe my first memory that was like really intense might be when I was like 3 and my sister and I were arguing. She's older than me by 5 years, so
Okay.
she's 8 at the time. And we're arguing because she like took my toy or something like that. And do you curse on this show or no?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Is that my mom growing up cursed like a sailor? So
Yeah.
I picked that up early from my mom, and I called my sister an asshole. And then, like, it wasn't even like it wasn't like in conversation. I looked at her and I said, "You're being an asshole," and then
Got
uh,
it.
like very proper usage of the word. And
Yeah.
then um, I remember then my sister looked at me and said, "I'm telling mom." And then I just terror set over my
Yeah.
mind. And then I climbed into our bunk bed and I was on the top bunk. And then I remember it was just silence in there, just waiting for anything to happen. And then eventually I saw my mom's hand raised over my bed with like holding a belt, and she just starts whipping. And so that was probably like the start of where I was like, oh, this is life, dude. This is how it's gonna be.
The
Um,
the the terror of just waiting there must have been just immense.
oh yeah, it was like Jaws, man. It was just like waiting for the shark to appear, and then finally like it did, and then yeah, that so then it wasn't until this year, I my ex broke up with me in July, that I like went through a crazy like mental growth and like
Mhm.
stopped judging myself and stopped holding myself back nearly as much as I was.
Yeah.
And now I curse. Up until July of this year, I did not curse.
Okay.
Like
I
so
I was
for
gonna say, like, which direction did it go? Did you just not care about getting hit anymore, or did you just not curse again? But I
oh
guess you
yeah,
found it.
it was very much a do everything in your power at all times to not get punished. I remember I was telling um I was telling somebody this story yesterday actually, that like growing up in my house, it was like I don't want to just turn this into like a therapy session of like me talking about my childhood. Like
We got time.
there's a purpose to things. But yeah, it was that like I remember I was in my kitchen and I dropped a glass bowl and it shattered, and you could it like when you break glass at my house, it was just deafening silence after, because it's just waiting. It's that moment again. It's waiting for the shark to appear. And
Yeah.
so uh when I dropped the glass bowl, the strategy in my house was just run. And so literally I just walk to the back door, unlock it, and then just bolt into the woods. And yeah, uh,
And I was gone for 3 weeks. I had to survive.
literally, like it was to the point where anytime something went wrong, myself, my older sister, or my little brother, it was always just the plan was always run, and then it was my mom would then get the other two kids to go get the whichever one just ran. So
I'm trying to figure out what if that's is that Hunger Games, is that Labyrinth? I'm trying to figure out which
oh yeah,
we're modeling here.
yeah. It's like it's semi Lord of the Flies, in
Okay.
that like all of the kids are just like little feral monsters, just like trying to. And then there's like one person who rises to power, and that was our mom. Like
Yeah.
to me, my mom is not my mom. My mom is another person who happened to have power over me as a child.
Gotcha.
Like just some, yeah, it was like a pointed that. And then like I very much view my mom as like an equal, if
Yeah.
anything.
Do you feel like your mom didn't have the tools to contain the just all the kids, or why do you think that was the that
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I've actually been doing a lot of reading about like complex trauma and complex PTSD. I highly recommend. There's a book that a lot of people have read, which is The Body Keeps the Score, which goes over how like trauma affects the body over time, like not only just physically like embedded within your DNA, because
yeah,
they have um there's like a test or an experiment that they did a while ago where they like introduced rats to the scent of cherries, and then they would
okay,
electrically shock them when they smelled the cherries.
yeah,
And from that, those rats or mice, whichever, had an aversion to cherries. But then what they did was they had those um, rats reproduce, and then their offspring, who had never been introduced to cherries or the electric shock,
yeah,
when they smelled cherries, had the same like adrenaline spike and anxiety follow, even though they had never gone through
interesting,
that experiment. So that's like how trauma is genetically passed down,
yeah,
but then also how trauma affects our mind and therefore affects our bodies through the decisions we make, such as people who are assaulted will often, especially at a young age,
yeah,
will like eat a lot, overeat and binge so that
yeah,
they're like not like sexually attractive
hmm,
typically. And so that way people don't want to engage in a sexual relationship with that person. Basically,
interesting,
it's like a subconscious, like there was this story in the book where this woman is like severely overweight, like unhealthily overweight. And
yeah,
her doctor like helps her to lose weight. And once she does lose weight, she loses like 200 pounds or something crazy, like some like crazy amount. And then her coworker inappropriately makes a like comment towards her, basically asking her out on a date, and
yeah,
she binges it and gains it all back. And it's because of this, partly attributed to this aversion of like she was assaulted when she was young, and
yeah,
worked through, with this therapist, this author in the book, he finds out she was assaulted, and therefore like she eats to remain like stereotypically unattractive so that
yeah,
people will not try to like have a relationship with her, because
yeah,
she's still like, because of what happened to her, she's still judging herself and therefore like punishing herself through that.
yeah,
um and then there's another book called What My Bones Know. And that one's really good. That one's like more of a testimonial. That one's
mm,
about a woman named Stephanie Fu, who she used to work for This American Life, very successful person, like in New York City, very successful, working at this like very famous company. Kind of a socialite, like going to parties, invited to people, knows like these crazy like circles and stuff like that.
yeah,
Like everything you'd be like, oh, that's a person who's like completely in control of their life.
yeah,
And the book goes about how she constantly felt like if she didn't achieve like these high standards set by herself and her boss, that she was a failure. She would cry going into work if someone gave her like minimal feedback on like a project or something like that, she would kind of like break down and stuff.
yeah,
And then she would get like aggressive and like had crazy mood swings and stuff, and like would constantly view herself as a failure. And that came from her childhood, of that her parents were physically and emotionally abusive and abandoned her. And
yeah,
so um yeah, that's where, thinking about all of that now and reading about that now and how it applies to me, I understand that that also applies to my own mother.
yeah,
And that it's then, now after what has been for me 8 years of like no contact with my mom,
yeah,
reaching out. And I messaged her a little bit ago, about a month ago, and I asked like, um, you know, I haven't talked to you in a while. I just want to know, what was your childhood like? And I said in the email, I was like, this is too, we only communicate via email because she did
okay,
not remember. Yeah.
yeah,
when I was 19, I separated completely. I changed banks. I changed my phone. I like got a new car. I like everything on paper. She had no way to contact me. I changed addresses so that
Gotcha.
like because I moved out, and so like she didn't know where I was moving and stuff like that. So I completely severed from my family for 8 years. Um, and like went to college on my own and stuff like that. And yeah, so I reached out and I was like, email to my mom, like, tell me about your childhood. This is kind of selfish because I'm just trying to figure out like how your childhood affected me. But like I and then I said, like, this is me trying to, in a way, extend compassion and empathy to you. Because yeah, that's how I feel. That's how I feel you get over trauma, man, is that like you can for sure, I still agree with like you don't have to forgive anybody at all.
Yeah.
And you don't nobody like if somebody hurt you, you don't have to give them compassion. For me, that's just how I operate at all
Yeah.
times. Or, like that's kind of something, it's not even a standard I'm holding myself to of like, oh, I have to forgive this person or I have to be empathetic or compassionate.
Right.
That's just what I want to do. That's
Yeah.
just what my natural instinct is because I think in, in 30 years, if I'm like on my deathbed or whatever at 58, uh, that like, or 40 years, I guess, that like, for me, I don't want to like be like, oh, I wish I tried my best earlier. Like I want to try my
Right.
best now so that I can try to, yeah, forgive. Yeah. And
Yeah, I feel like in 2008, during that election cycle, I was on Facebook a lot. And like
mhm,
I'd be talking to people and I'm like, hey, this is like what I think about what you're saying, and like this is my perspective. And I just was never getting anywhere with anybody. And like I was confused because I'm like, hey, this is like these are the things I know. And since I am now telling you these same things, like why isn't it changing your opinion? And then in my great wisdom, I was like, oh, like we've lived totally different lives. You believe what you believe, not just because of like one fact you've heard, but because your
yeah,
whole life has led you to that decision. So it's going to take a lot, unless you're really open to changing your opinion, like to change your opinion. So
yeah,
I've given a lot more people grace on the
yeah,
opinion they have, except for if it's my family, because I'm like, wait, I know your life. This is wild.
yeah. I I agree with that, and that's why I find like because I'm a stand-up comedian, I find it so incredible that people can have such completely different lives. Like from the people I've talked to and been friends with over the years, like a lot of my friends have had like very like tough childhoods or like tough moments in their childhood, or like harsh things happen. But like talking with them, and I'm not trying to compare, you know, traumas and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but then like a lot of them do hear my childhood and they're like, that sounds incredibly painful. And then I have another friend who had a childhood where he even says, he's like, my childhood was so chill. It's like,
Yeah.
and then, but at the same time, like he and I can connect, even though we had completely different experiences, completely different childhoods and adult lives and stuff. And that's what's also kind of incredible about stand up is that like I can go on stage and talk about like my experiences of being me
Yeah.
and put it in a way that people can laugh about because they can understand being in that situation, or at the very least they can understand something similar to themselves that they've gone through. And so that's where like I feel like it's so kind of beautiful that people can have such completely different lives, but then because we are all human, we still get it.
Mm.
That's where like there's one story I heard back in college of this guy who he was a black man who would meet with KKK members,
Okay.
and I forget his name.
I want to say Donald Rawlings, but that's not the.
Mel Rawlings is a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, I know. I think the guy you're talking about is like a guitarist, or he's in
Yeah,
a.
he's a musician. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm trying to remember his name as well. Um, but yeah,
yeah.
he would just talk to the members and they'd be like,
Daryl
oh, like
Davis.
you're a real person too.
Yeah, Daryl Davis. So
Yes.
he was a blues musician. And what would happen is that he wouldn't like go and like fight with these people. Like obviously like any action he does is justified in my mind because like
Mm,
these are people who actively want the death of him, right?
yeah.
Like that's the message of the Klan is an ethnic cleansing, right? So he is justified in any action he takes, whether it's compassion or aggression. I don't. I he is free in that regard. But that what he would do, and it's not his job to do it, is that he just wanted to do it. Is that he would meet with KKK members and he would talk with them and like show the humanity of him and that like it's something incredible that he would ask like, oh, what do you think about this, what do you think about this, and like get to understand their perspective. And then he would be like, what do you want in your life and all these different types of things. And then he'd go, okay, now also think about that with me.
Man,
And then all of a sudden it just, they would just gain empathy,
right.
literally, that they would understand how it was to be another person of a different perspective.
Yeah.
And then he got a bunch of KKK members to renounce their membership. And yeah, he got 200 Klansmen to renounce their memberships, which is
I mean,
insane.
if you're talking about life achievements, I feel like you're hitting some good numbers with that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, and that it's not his job in any way to do that, but that, like, that is an example of where people live completely different lives, but then just through connection, you can gain a compassion for another person. And so, even someone who has severely harmed you. So that's kind of my logic behind like reaching out to my own mom and trying to forgive her. And yeah, I mean, like, and then also the more I let go of how much I was hurt and kind of attacked, the funnier I've become,
Mm,
and because I'm less shackled
yeah.
by like by this pain and this like entire experience, and that I feel more like, oh, I'm no longer this, like my identity is not this thing that happened, but rather my identity is who I am and the choices I make and the person
Yeah.
I want to become. And I just happen to have this preference for these choices I make from the things I've gone through. And so that's where now all of a sudden when I go on stage and I say come, it's not from a place of pain, it's from a place of joy.
Yeah. So when you were growing up, were you like, hey, this may not be like the normal? Was it like middle school, elementary school? When were you like, ah, something might be a little off?
I think it was when I was 14, 12 to 14 is when I had the thought of, I think my mom's a bad person.
Hmm.
And then it wasn't until, but then the thing is that growing up in a house like that, you're constantly told to second guess yourself.
Right.
So something happens, and then, similar to the book What My Bones Know, Stephanie Fu, same thing would happen is that it's very common for people with complex trauma that their parents would do something and then like punish them and then go, why do you make me punish you? Why do you make me do this?
Yeah.
And that like basically putting the blame upon you. So then you, as the receiver of this, feel like everything
Right.
that goes wrong is your fault. Um, and so that's where, like, even when I was like, oh, I think my mom's a bad person, is that it was still like, well, I mean, like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like, oh my God, I forgot about this. When I was 7 years old, my mom got gave away my dogs and cats to the pound and took me with her to watch her do it. And like we just like, and she when she got back in the car, I was like crying, and she was like, "This is because you're a bad dog owner or a bad pet owner." And I was 7 years old, and that it was. I started going to therapy last August.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's where like I told my therapist that, and my therapist was like, "Oh my God." And I was like, "Well, yeah, but I wasn't taking care of the dogs, cats, I was." And my therapist is like, "You were 7." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I mean, it's like that's how it is that in your brain you're still
Right.
just like you're still like, well, I was I wasn't a good pet owner." And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but now it's like telling myself, "But you were 7."
Right.
Like as a person who, as you who have kids, I mean, imagine doing that to your child at 7 years old.
Oh,
Is that it's like, yeah, it's like you have so much empathy where you're like, this is a 7 year old. I can't trust them to do anything.
right.
Like, so the fact that like them being in charge of taking care of the entire house and the pets and all this type of stuff is like my mom was treating me like a full like 45-year-old like sweatshop manager. And then I was like told to like take care of this like stuff, and then I couldn't do it, and then she like got rid of my animals. It's like crazy, like the levels that it would go. Yeah,
Well, when you get a oh my gosh from the therapist, you know you're hitting them with some good stuff.
yeah, that's where I was like, oh, okay. Like the thing is that at the time, like hearing something like that, it's like it's so rough and terrible, but also it feels validating because you're like, oh, I did go through something bad because you're
Yeah.
still questioning it. It's not until you accept, like, oh, I went through something terrible, that you start to be like, oh, I went through something terrible. And um, now, like, it's crazy that, like, I recommend therapy to anybody because, like, especially my ex. um, that, that one's for me. That was a joke for me. But yeah, no, because like the thing is that like I didn't know I wouldn't allow myself to feel how bad it was. I would even
Yeah.
acknowledge that with people. I'd be like, they'd be like, Jacob, you don't let yourself process your childhood, and I'm like, I can't because I don't know if I'll survive that. But that it's through like because I had such a lack of self esteem, is that through gaining self esteem, I'm now like, it's weird. It's like I'm gaining self esteem, and then it gets harder because I'm then having to challenge the like constant like negative thoughts in my own head. But
Yeah.
then through continuing to gain self esteem, it becomes easier and easier. So at first, it's extremely overwhelming. And I would spend like weeks just like feeling awful because like just wanting to punish myself, like telling myself I'm bad, like not allowing myself to be affectionate to those I care about and stuff. And that like it's because I was just starting to process this thing that had gone on for 19 years and then 8 years of me just not dealing with it at all.
Yeah.
And then um and so yeah, now it's like now with therapy, it's like finally allowing yourself to just go like this was bad um, than doing things that feel stupid in the moment,
Yeah.
such as like I do what's called open chair therapy.
Okay.
So it's crazy. You just sit a chair in front of you, just an empty chair,
I,
and you just talk to it as if there was like yeah, thanks. Talk to it as if the person you wanted to talk to was there. So like if you have
interesting.
like an issue, yeah. So like first of all, because it does some things. One is that the other person isn't there, so you technically don't have to like care about their feelings in that moment. Like you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like when we have it, like you speaking with your wife, is that you're probably like as you talk with her, you're not going to be like, oh you idiot. Like you're going to be compassionate in some way.
Right.
But like when it's just you in an empty chair, you can be like, hey, what you did was like fucked up, and I hated that, and that
Yeah.
like you can speak more brazenly and get those like strong emotions out. But then as well, like you can also acknowledge the things that you are unable to say, especially if it's a person you cannot talk to.
Right.
Like, so for example, like for a long time, even now, like I don't talk with my mom all the time. I email her basically like once a month, right? As of like literally last month or a month before that. But so, uh, that is a person I don't even know how to talk to. So
Right.
doing like she's asked if I could hop on the phone with her, and I don't even know how to do that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know how to talk to that person. So I'll set up an open chair, just an empty chair, and just talk at the chair and imagine her being there. And it feels silly. It feels weird
Yeah.
because like you're just talking to nothing. But like as you like just like fully immerse yourself in it and just like be like, all right, I am talking to this person. Like you can even imagine how they would reply and then be like, oh, I knew you'd bring that up, like, but like, yeah, it's like, it's so helpful. And just like, yeah, just trying to better yourself because, like, for example, for me, I went through 19 years of like growing up in my house. I moved out. I moved into my friend's parents' place. I lived there for a few years and I was like on my own for a while and I've like basically financially and like every other way supported myself entirely since then. And
Yeah.
I I for the from up till 19 until 26, 27, basically 27, I wasn't going to therapy. I tried it a little, I tried counseling in college and stuff like that, but I wasn't dealing with this. And then I got into my first like adult committed long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of issues in that relationship, unfortunately, and on both ends. And although she would disagree, so but no, there was a lot of like issues because we both, in my opinion, have complex trauma from our childhoods, and that's what made it so difficult is how similar we were, and
Mhm.
that like we both had strong triggers to mild things. And then during the relationship, it was really rough, and then she broke up with me, and then I had already been going to therapy, but I it finally clicked in my head from this like terrible loss that like, oh, I've been living my life controlled by the fear and pain of my past this entire time.
Yeah.
And that I'm 28 now. I just turned 28 a few weeks ago. And that I now finally get to feel like I'm in charge of what's going on. And
That's
that,
awesome.
yeah. And that that's where like I have so many friends who are like, oh, I want to try therapy, but like, I don't know if it'll help. And like, what if it doesn't? And it's like just think about how like if um you've lived however long you are or however long you have, but then like you now have decades more to like actually enjoy what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's where and then as well, like one thing is that you kind of got to believe that it's going to work. You got to at least like a little bit believe. Because if you, that's what I've learned through cognitive behavior therapy. It's called, or CBT.
Mhm.
Um, that CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, not cock and ball torture. But so in cognitive behavior therapy, they talk about how like if your thoughts control your emotions, and that if you tell yourself like I'm gonna have a bad day, you're gonna have a bad day. Like if
Mhm.
you tell yourself like this thing's gonna go terribly, it's gonna go terribly because you're not gonna want it to go well. And so if you're trying to get better in therapy and you're telling yourself the whole time, this is not gonna, this therapy isn't gonna work, this isn't gonna work, is that it's not gonna work. That you have to just tell yourself, you know what, this is gonna work. No matter if it gets difficult, difficulty is not the problem. It's
Yeah.
that there's things that have always worked out, but they were difficult to make happen. This is gonna work. And so yeah, it's yeah, just a belief in oneself and a belief in the fact that you can do it will then actually allow you to do it. It's great.
Yeah, and I think just like anything else, it's important that you find the right therapist. I was in therapy for an extended period of time. My parents got divorced at a young age, but
Mm.
on my mom's side, they were involved with National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. So they were very like, hey, like we
Okay.
got to get them as much help as we can, just help guide them through it. Um, but I've definitely seen my handful of therapists and some of the shenanigans. There was
Yeah.
one time where so I'd like to say aggressive ADHD, where it's just like, if I don't want to do it, you tell me to do it. Like, I'm just going to fight back more. Like, I really
Yeah,
want to
for
do
sure.
it, but since you tell me to do it, not going to happen.
It's that
So,
ADHD stubbornness. I don't know what it is, but that's 90% of my friends have ADHD. So then it's like, yeah, you tell them like, hey, could you do the dishes? And they're like, I was just about to, but now I will never do the dishes ever again in my life.
so one of the times, like, so I had to go home and mow the lawn, and my therapist, like, in front of my mother, was like, "Hey, if he doesn't go mow the lawn, then you have to send him to a homeless shelter."
Wow.
And I'm in like high school at this time, and my mom's like, I don't feel like a homeless shelter is gonna take him. Like, he saved a bunch of money. Like, I don't think that you can just send him to one of those. And so they'd always try to find like the more punishments to do it. But like, if my neighbor asked me to mow the lawn, or like doing something for somebody else, like, all about it. But it was
Yeah.
just, there was a couple therapists that are like, hey, just come up with the wildest punishments for him to like see if you can push him to do this thing. Or I had some other therapists that they're like, just let him do what he wants. Like, let him think. Like, let's just let him be. So
That's
I've
such
had
a
the
fun.
run of the mill.
That's such a like I've heard people who are like, oh, I've had like some bad therapists where like they just kind of like told me that it was my fault, which is already very bad. But then for one to then go, no, take him to a homeless shelter. See how that does him. Also, I don't think that you can just drop someone off at a homeless shelter and be like, they're homeless now. Like they're
I,
like a baby on the firehouse steps. Like that's
yeah,
not how it works. Like you're a person. You're in high school. If you drop him off at the homeless shelter, he'll just be like, "Hey, my address is this. Could you take me back?" Like
yeah. I
that's
think
they.
logistically they didn't think through like the punishments, because like at one point they took the car away, they started taking like everything away. But I was in high school, it was like somewhere in high school, I would just walk to my friend's house, like there was food at home.
Yeah.
It wasn't working, and then my mom was like, maybe we find a different therapist.
Would they refuse you food?
No, no, I mean, like, my family was busy, so like they're never like, hey, you can't have this, but anything other like than sustaining life, you can't have. But like,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
fine just chilling.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing is that my mom would not under the recommendation of a therapist, but just she would just take stuff away as well. Like she would be
Yeah.
like, "All right, you don't have a car, you don't have a phone, you don't have a like video game system, you don't have this." Like my mom eventually would take away food. So
Oh no.
yeah, she'd be like, "All right, like everything in the pantry and the fridge you cannot eat, but if you can find food after that, sure." But then like yeah, there was days where I just didn't eat for several days. Um
So are you
but
foraging for food? What's happening at
yeah,
this
so what
point?
would happen is that I would go to school and then I would have one meal a day because my mom would also like take the money out of my lunch account so I couldn't
Oh,
get lunch at school. And so then I would go to the cafeteria and my friends would get food
yeah,
at the cafeteria and then they would give me the pieces of food that they didn't like. So they would give me like one of them didn't like peas, so he would give me his peas, the other didn't like mashed potatoes. One would be like, oh, I only eat like chicken nuggets, so here's or, whatever else,
yeah,
be like, oh, here's my milk and stuff like that. And then some days that they wouldn't be able to give me food, I would go to the vending machine and I would have usually like $1 or two in my wallet because I would just find them every so often, and
yeah,
I would get from the vending machine a cinnamon bun because it was the highest caloric intake on the of the vending machine. So I would get like this super thick, sugary cinnamon bun that was like 1,500 calories from how much sugar it had.
yeah,
Just eat that, and that would be like my meal for the day. Um, and so, yeah, I would do that a lot of the time. But that's to say that my mom would also take stuff away. But that once you like start taking stuff away, you just kind of just realize like how little you need, and you're like, oh, I'm chilling.
yeah,
Because the thing is that like if my mom took away my phone, it did suck, but because she would also go through my phone, but also it'd be like, oh well, I'm not getting hit right now, so that's pretty sick, you
yeah.
know.
So
It would.
would the subtractions happen because like you broke another glass and like were you just a very clumsy kid or like what was it that would create
Oh,
that
I mean, anything would set my mom off.
yeah,
If like if she came home and like uh the like carpet hadn't been vacuumed, but even though she didn't tell me to vacuum it, she'd be like, "You should have expected that I wanted it vacuumed," um, like yeah, like if a chore wasn't done, or she would just come in and be like, "I heard this idea. I think that you're like." She'd be like, "Do you have Snapchat?" And I would be like, "Yeah," and she'd be like, "Give me your phone," and I'd be like, "Why?" And she'd be like, "I've heard people are sending nudes on Snapchat. You can't have your phone." And then I'm like, I'm not, I have no one to send. Why would I? And then, uh, yeah, so like very much this,
yeah.
yeah, just like any reason could be a reason to take something away.
All right,
Uh,
let's hit some positives. Are we hitting vacations? Are we
oh
doing
yeah,
fun
yeah.
things at
So
school?
well, that's the thing is that like now, like anything is awesome now. Like
Yeah,
yesterday, I went over to a friend's place and we got some like Totino's microwavable pizzas, and
yeah,
I was having a blast. And then we just started watching some Harry Potter movies. Like I is like this is a crazy good life now because
yeah,
like now through therapy, I've realized like oh, there's like gratitude in everything that's going on. Like my friends, like I've found an amazing friend group that
yeah,
that just like helped me feel supported, and I feel like I could be as dumb and stupid as I want, and I don't feel like they're like not going to exclude me from something because of like some like petty reason. They're just
yeah,
like, they want me around at all times. And that feels great. And I feel very accepted by them. And I'm like through them learning to accept myself as well. And that how like amazing they've always viewed me. And now I'm like interviewing for some jobs. I got laid off October 1st. So
okay.
I'm on unemployment. That's pretty dope. And then I'm like going on I'm like interviewing. Last week I had an interview for a job and at the end the guy was like, "You interview well." And I was like, "Nice." Like yeah, I'm so like to me interviews are like dates where you're just trying to flirt with a person as much as possible. And like just fully just be like, "Oh, you're so smart. Like it would be so smart of you to like hire me. That's crazy." Like yeah, I'm so then I have an interview tomorrow, like, and these are jobs that would pay me like more than I've ever been paid in my life and
Yeah.
like kind of crazy cool. And then like comedy's going well. I'm like clips do well and I'm funny and I'm going on stage and I'm doing very well and just like learning to appreciate what I've created for myself because nobody else like gave me this life
Yeah.
is that I gave it to myself and that I'm very appreciative of myself for doing that.
I would say a lot of people that are like, oh, I've done this all by myself for this company or this huge massive thing.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
obviously, like you had help by the government. You probably had like this rich somebody that pushed you out of the way, but I feel like you got a good argument for for patting
Yeah.
yourself on the back. You're doing
Yeah, well, because like obviously, like I am here through the people that I've come across, right? Like when I was in school, I is that like it is in a way self-made and not self-made in that when I was in high school, I entered and I failed 3 classes freshman year. And then I was like literally third to last in my class, like dead, like 1.9 GPA,
yeah.
like just tanking myself. And they were like, "We're gonna hold you back." And the reason I started trying harder and like eventually like graduated with like decent grades was because and went to college was because I didn't want to be held back and not see my friends.
Okay.
And so it was like this thing of like I was doing it for them for a long time. I was doing it, but in a way like doing it for me. But like
Yeah.
that's a big thing is that like I've learned to work through is or learning to work through is doing things for other people. Like I love doing things for other people. And it's kind of similar of like And like if somebody were to ask me, hey, could you do this for like, somebody else, like I wouldn't feel like a stubbornness of like no, because I'd be like, no, I
Right.
love that guy. I'm gonna go do that for that guy immediately because like they're great. And so I was doing these things for them, but then in a way also doing it for me because I was
Oh,
like, these are the people
absolutely.
I want to be around. I'm gonna do this thing I don't want to do because I want to be around this other person. And then eventually now it like got to the point of like when I was with my ex, is that I started going to therapy for her.
Yeah.
That like I was going to therapy because I was like, I have a lot of problems and I want to work on those and I want to overcome them so that I can be a better partner for her.
Mhm.
And that was like that was the motivator. But then that was like it was unfortunate in that that was like very romantic motivation, but it wasn't proper motivation because then it's putting a lot of pressure on me. And I was
Yeah.
constantly holding myself up to this standard where now it's like, no, I go to therapy because I want to stop feeling bad. I want to
Right.
stop. I want to feel better. And so now that has allowed me to become an even better partner overall. And so, yeah, it was just like this thing of like always doing everything for everybody else and now doing it for myself, which in a way is like self-made and not self-made. So like nobody is self-made, but at the same time, like everyone is, because if your motivation is I want this thing for myself, then using or like working with other people is still for you, you know? So
How good does it feel that you are where you are and like you've put yourself in a position to succeed? Like, do you? It sounds like you're pumped.
yeah, no, actually literally every day is like kind of I mean like there's still hard days and stuff like that, but it's really like I wake up, I journal, and I meditate so that I can like try to instill a sense of gratitude in myself for the rest of the day. That way, any trials I overcome or I face that day, I can overcome with an idea of like, well, actually, my life is pretty great. So
Yeah.
whether this thing affects me or not doesn't matter because I'm still me at the end of the day. Like literally in my journal, I wrote today, this morning, I was like, I get to be Jacob Chalk and nobody else does. That's awesome. And that, so it's, yeah, it's like, it feels awesome. And that I'm now trying to practice gratitude in a sense of like I'm so happy for the things I have, but also it's okay to want more and that I want to give myself great things. So I
Yeah.
want to get a job. I can get a job. I can get any job, truly. Like I can go to a place and get a part-time job right now, like probably today. But I want a job that's going to be like full-time and has these certain like benefits and stuff like that. So because I want to give that to myself because I feel like I deserve that.
Yeah.
Not in a sense of like I deserve these good things, but like no, like treating it as if I was my own partner. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like when I was with my ex, like every day was me giving her little treats and stuff like that because I was like, she is perfect.
Yeah.
I love this person. I want them to feel the affection that I have. And then now shifting that to looking at myself and being like, perfect. Like
Mhm.
I want you to have great things because I like you so much. And so then being like, okay, I want to give myself a job that is going to like satisfy me and allow me to achieve all the things that I want to do. So yeah, like that's positive. I don't even need to be like doing amazing things. I don't need to be like going on vacation every other week. Just to like be able to like go to a store and buy hummus is pretty sick to me, honestly.
I think that'd be a good shirt. Yeah, I feel the best one of the best tools for myself was um you are either out loud or in front of a mirror or in your head, you just say, I love myself, breathe, take a
Mhm.
moment, say, I love myself. And then you say it long enough until you believe the situation, because then that's what you're going to do. You're going to act towards somebody that you love. And if you love yourself, you're going to be treating
Yeah.
yourself well. And sometimes I forget. And then I'm like, oh, okay. Am I talking to someone the way I would if I loved them? And like, oh, sometimes maybe we're not doing that
Yeah.
with the self-talk.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's okay to get frustrated with yourself as
Yeah.
well. But like, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, just as long as you're not like berating yourself, because like the way that I think so many people talk to themselves and the way that I was talking to myself was very much like a, oh, like you're not likable, you're unlovable, you're a failure, you're not, all these different types of things. But if somebody else were to walk up to you and be like, hey man, I just noticed you're a failure, you'd be like, I hate you. Like, just go away. Why are you here? But
That's
like,
wild.
yeah, but then like, but like because it's you doing that, you're like, well, I'm pretty accurate, and you're like, no, this is really detrimental to what I'm trying to do,
Yeah.
which is take care of this person. So, yeah, it's a lot of that, and then I would say the only thing is just like just kind of like a bittersweet of like, oh, this is awesome, but then thinking about all the like relationships of previous times and like past people that I've known and cared for and whatnot. And then kind of the factor that I was letting a lot of like the anxiety and depression take over and like treat them ways that I don't like how I treated them.
Mhm.
And just kind of like a I guess yeah, just like that makes me want to cry. That
Yeah.
like I just want to tell these people like I wish I could go back and just like in that moment in the way that I hurt them, hug them, and just like truly extend nothing but compassion to them
Yeah.
and let them know that like yeah, I care for them so much.
We'll clip it. We'll send it to him.
Yeah, you're perfect. Nice. I got a few
Which time are you talking about? Just all of them. Just all
just
of
every person ever.
them.
But
So
yeah,
when you so you're a comedian, when did you first get the idea that you wanted to do comedy, and then when was your first time?
I was 6 years old, and I saw Ron White do stand-up comedy on the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. My mom rented the DVD, and I watched him tell the tater salad joke, and I lost my mind laughing.
Yeah.
And the next day, I went to school, and my teacher asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said a stand-up comedian. So I have always wanted to be a comedian. I've always cherished laughter and silliness and fun, and that's where like I've just wanted to do that all the time because I find it so silly.
Mhm.
Um, and then the first time I ever did stand-up comedy was, I believe, March 14th, 2016. I don't count that necessarily as my start because I view that as the first time I did stand-up comedy. I went up at what is no longer existing World of Beer in Kennesaw, Georgia, and it was by the Kennesaw State University. And I went up. I did 5 minutes. I remember my first joke. The joke that the part that I thought was funny did not get a laugh. The part that afterward did, I was like, interesting. I didn't know how to be funny yet.
Yeah.
The joke is not good, so you don't have to laugh. I don't care. But that I just walked on stage and I said, "All right, um, my name is Jacob. I'm a comedian. My first joke, my life choices. Nothing on response. And then I went, okay, second joke. And that got a laugh, surprisingly. And that like it's not good, but it was like that's what got a laugh. So
I can see where that would get a laugh because it was just like,
yeah, it's just so matter of fact. I
yeah.
understand how it got a laugh, but as a better comedian now, I'm like, nah, you got to do better than that, buddy. And so yeah, I went up and I did 5 minutes of material. I talked about like my funeral, like what that would be like and stuff like that. All these different sorts of premises. And then a comedian after that talked with me, the host, and he was like, it was very flattering. He was like, I don't believe that that was your first time. You seemed more confident than a first timer. And I was
Yeah.
like, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And then I didn't actually do stand up comedy again until a year later, where
Why not?
I yeah, I think I was still scared. Partly, maybe this is post fact attributing it to that. I don't know, but I was just like, I just wasn't ready to commit. I guess I wasn't ready to like try and fail and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I count my start as June 2017. Uh, it's like that's where I was like, no, I'm like doing this. I'm chasing this. I'm gonna try to be a comedian. And then now I'm almost 7.5 years in,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm doing a lot better than I ever thought I would. And it's kind of crazy that like now I have a lot of jokes where I'm talking about like growing up and defects being called on my house 6 times growing up and all these different types of things. And people are laughing at the jokes. And I'm like, this is wild that like this thing that was so detrimental to me
Right.
that I've always tried to like talk about and people don't want to hear
Yeah.
as now I'm making to be a funny thing. And that's awesome.
I got material for days.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I got 19 years of stuff, dude. I got the whole I haven't I haven't used the vet thing yet or the pet thing yet, but
Yeah.
that'll be there someday.
It's coming. It's coming. So
Yeah.
for writing itself, do you have a process that you go through? Like I always look at people on YouTube and they don't really seem to have a good like, hey, write this, write this. There's the two European guys. I'm trying to remember what they had not a podcast, a comedian class that they ran. It was over in Europe. They're on Rogan every once in a while. I'm terrible with names.
Mhm.
But like it seemed that they had a little of a process, not necessarily worksheets, but things to go through to help. But have you worked with anybody when you first got started, or how was the process for you?
No, I've been very much like just kind of on my own the whole time. I mean, like
Yeah,
not like I'll run a joke by another comic and stuff like that, like or a friend. Like I'll be like, hey, like tell a friend and be like, okay, you think this is funny? You're somebody who really likes me and stuff like that. So like, if I am rolling with the audience or like getting kind of feedback a little bit, telling somebody, but then after a little while, just kind of having confidence in like writing a bit and then being like, I think this is funny. I'm
yeah,
not gonna like, I don't need to check in with somebody else to see if they think it's funny. Like, I believe it's funny. I'm gonna take it to the stage because I believe it's funny. And if it doesn't do well, then I'll run it by somebody else after trying it for a little bit and be like,
gotcha.
yeah, like in a way, having more confidence in like over time being like, no, like I'm pretty sure this is funny.
Yeah.
And then saying it on stage and then it gets nothing and then you're like, ooh, my confidence was misplaced.
So
Uh,
what do you do when a casual comes up to you and says like, hey, like I got a bunch of premises. What do you think I should do with these?
I love jokes, so I may hear them, and it's
Yeah.
also flattering that somebody would come up to me and ask me for their feedback on their jokes, because I still view myself as very much still learning.
Yeah.
So, plus I view it as a writing exercise. So, I mean, somebody can come up to me and be like, "Hey, I got these jokes," and it depends. Like, it also depends like what mood I'm in, but sometimes I'll be like, yeah, tell me what you got. And
Yeah.
then they'll tell me, and I'll be like, if I truly have no feedback, like if they tell me, they're like, yeah, so I was like going on a date with a dog. I'm like, I have no notes. I truly have no feedback to give. This is insane. Like I'll be like, take it on stage, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like,
Yeah.
try it. Who knows? Like it may do well, it may not. I don't know. I have no clue. Um, or if somebody will tell me like, "Oh, I got this," then I'll be like, "Okay, I hear it." And then, it depends. Like sometimes it'll be like, "Oh, that's a solid premise." I think that there's a like I'll literally break it down and be like, "Solid premise. I think there's a disconnect here. I think you could reword this, flip it, go a different direction." But like that start, I'm locked in on. So
Yeah.
like that's where like I try to give as usable feedback as I can. Or if somebody's like, "Hey, I got a bunch of jokes. What do you think about like is this like I don't know, man, like how do you feel about your jokes? Like do
Mhm.
you feel that they're good? Because if
Yeah.
you don't feel that they're good, then I'm not gonna feel that they're good, you know?
Right.
So it's like it kind of just depends on who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love giving feedback on jokes. Is this you
Perfect.
tossing
Well,
a
you're
kid?
gonna get about 30 voice memos as soon as it
Yeah,
it's
perfect.
like, damn it. So I would say that I get a lot of interest in things. Um, so usually like I'll try stuff for a while, but then the thing that's always scared me about comedy is like you have to suck for like a long time. And
Yeah.
usually when it comes to things, it takes me like maybe the first couple tries when it comes to sports or learning any new whatever it is. Like I can pick the things up pretty well, but I know comedy's not going to be easy. And like
Yeah.
I would say that things generally come easy to me, and when I have to work really hard, I kind of shy away.
That's ADHD.
Yeah.
That's fully ADHD. That is that is yeah, I'm very familiar with that because that is all my friends, that's my ex, that's all of them. Just
Yeah. I mean,
great at everything they do.
I've lucked my way into I'm a stay-at-home dad. So my two kids give me like the dopamine I need, the reminders constantly. So like I'm on top of it. But like when it
Yeah.
comes to my own stuff, and if it's not scheduled, it's just off into the ether. That's not getting that's not getting remembered.
Yeah. I'm curious as to then how it was becoming a parent because were you worried like, am I gonna be good at this or am I gonna like
Oh, scared shitless. Like that, like I was working with a it was more closer to cognitive behavior therapy,
Mhm.
and we would just write out like what our thoughts were, and I was so consistently worried about being a failure, and she would see me the way I think of me, and
Wow.
everyone's like, what are you talking about? Like, you're phenomenal, you do so much for other people, yada yada yada. And like the words that I was telling myself were not reality, but that's just what
Yeah.
worried me all the time. It's still something like I work on, but as far as like a stay-at-home dad, I'm like, I could be doing these million other different things, but she was fed, she was taken
Mhm.
care of the whole time. We did all these activities. She didn't watch TV just because I'm not busy, so I can be there
Yeah.
the whole time. We learned these new skills, but there was always the unknowing and okay, what's next? Could I be doing better? I was very worried about becoming a parent for sure because I knew what I could do, but on a consistency basis, there's not a lot that like the parenting thing, it's every day.
Yeah, yeah, and especially with ADHD, where you're like, I get obsessed with something for 6 months and then I drop it. It's a like, you're like, is that going to happen? Like, am I going to be 6 months in and be like, I'm done? Um, no, that's something that's like, I kind of experienced a little bit of what you talked about at the start about like, is this person going to see me the way I see me?
Yeah.
Which that like when so I was single for from 19 to 26 when I finally met my ex, right? Because I was like scared. I was like, I have so many problems. Kind of that again, like kind of like avoidance of like, I don't want to hurt another person. I don't want them to
Right.
see me the way that I don't want to see them to see the like way that I see myself. And and then she broke up with me one time. We broke up for the second and final time this past summer. But this past winter, we broke up for like a month, and I remember I was like probably like a week or two into the breakup, and I read the like Christmas card that she had gotten me, and I just started sobbing uncontrollably because I finally realized like I knew how much like how like I saw her, how great I saw her, and how like I thought she was just like this glowing beacon of just like radiance and just exception. And then I like imagined or I like yeah, recalled the memory of when I first said I love you to her
Yeah.
and the way that she smiled and looked at me. And then in that moment, I like flipped the perspective and imagined the way she was seeing me in that moment.
Yeah.
And I still had those feelings of like raw, unconditional love, but realizing that that's the same way that she saw me. And I just started sobbing because it was like my first time being like, oh, another person can unconditionally love me and
Yeah.
and feel that just is that however much I loved her is how much she loved me.
Mhm.
And it was like such a strong, like, just, it was, and then it was immediate, just immediate regret. It was just
Yeah.
immediate, like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, uh, and just like so aggressively, like, I didn't know someone could view another person. I didn't know someone else could view me this way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where like the kind of the same thing of like, I don't want them to see how badly I see myself, and then realizing like how perfect I see this other person and how they can truly like they can do things that annoy me, but they can truly do no wrong in my
Yeah.
mind is like how they view me. And that is insane where you're like, but all the mistakes I've made and this, whoever it is, like for me, it was her at the time, or for you, it's like your child. They're both
Yeah.
just like, no, I don't care. Like, I don't care. You're pretty awesome in my opinion,
Yeah.
and
So
like, wow.
so what's going on with the breakup here? Are we getting her back? We moving on? What's happening?
We are moving on.
Okay.
We are moving on. That was very toxic and terrible. But we are trying to move on so hard trying to move on. And I'm doing well every day. I'm doing well. I'm doing better. But yeah, no, that was aggressive. That was a rough one. But I'm extremely grateful, and I even told her that during the breakup because I told her like I'm so thankful to you for breaking my heart and showing me that I can love somebody this much and that I
Yeah.
can be this committed to somebody and like really want to get to know them and that I can even be hurt this much,
Yeah.
which is very, very Hindu of me, even though I'm not Hindu at all. But like, uh, there's a school of Hindu that exists. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically that like Hinduism is all about like realizing that neither of us are separate, that we are all one,
Yeah.
right? And that it's not even just like one, but that everything is everything. That hypothetically, like I could be a past life of you living right now, right? That I'm a life that you already lived and you're on to this next life, right? And so this whole idea is to then uh it's the school of love within Hinduism that you extend love and compassion to everything, including the negative. Meaning that like if you were to be mugged and this guy were to stab you, is that you not only love him, you love the fact that he stabbed you, you love the pain, you love the knife that he used, you love it all because it all is one,
Mhm.
because it all just is being as a whole. And that's to make it a more understandable way is that loving this person who's breaking my heart because I was given the opportunity to love them.
Yeah.
Loving this person because I'm able to feel the pain and loss of them being gone shows how much I truly did commit. And it then is like a gratitude of like, thank you for not only showing me that what I can do, but also for giving me the time to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if we would have just started with that piece of information, they would have been like, hey, this guy is just spouting out some nonsense. But I feel like the whole story is like, oh, absolutely. Like I can
Oh
really
yeah, no,
get
yeah.
behind you
You're
on
like,
that.
yeah, you're like, if I were to start with that, you'd be like, this guy's aggressively like, oh, I'm just kind of like here, man. But then if you go through and you're like, all right, I get why.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah,
as far as the comedy goes, do you have an agent? Are you like, I want to hit these types of goals? How does that work as far as the
yeah. So I am someone without an agent, currently. I could theoretically try to get an agent, but I don't believe that I'm at the stage right now to necessarily require that or facilitate that. Instead, it's a lot of like doing it yourself until eventually you like have to get someone else involved, right?
yeah.
So, or it like makes too much sense to not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so right now, what I do is, I mean, I'm doing just a lot of like open mics to like constantly get better, shows whenever they're offered. October was a really good month for me. I was like on a lot of shows and I was like traveling around. This past Friday I went to a show in South Carolina, so that was pretty fun. It was just like a kind of like semi-divey bar, but
Okay.
then like full of a bunch of like older people. But then I did very well on that show where everybody was struggling. And then yeah, like uh, yeah, basically just like traveling to other cities and getting my name out in those cities.
Yeah.
And that way I can then go to those cities again and do even more time and then build up like a repertoire there. And then from there being like, all right, now let me see if I can like get an agent and then like really that like any step I get to, I don't want to be like just getting there and like
Okay.
just barely earning it. You know what I mean? Like for me, it's if I'm given an opportunity, I want to know from like start to finish, back to front, like in every way, shape, and form that I am going to crush it.
Gotcha.
Because for me, I like being extensively prepared, like overly prepared. That way, it just feels like, yeah, it just feels like walking through just like butter, basically. Just
So
like,
are you reading through your set extensively? Are you writing note cards? What makes you feel prepared?
oh, very good. Literally, I have right now, I have like a 15-minute set that I'm like, I have a total of probably like 35, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But I would say like of that, I have like a 15 within there where I'm like, this is like untouchable. Like I love this. This does well. And I have like if a joke doesn't do as well as it normally does, I have a save which then like brings it back even harder. Like
Yeah.
at least like it's so like for me, it's the best I have possibly prepared, and it's like as intricate as I've made anything else currently. In 10 years, you'll ask me that, and I'll be like, that was a awful 15, but
Yeah.
like right now it's a 15 that I can travel to another city and do very well.
Okay.
And so with that is that what makes me confident is is like I can kind of go over it and be like, okay, this, but I don't like sit there study and like look at my notes. Is that for
Okay.
me, it's very much a like, all right, like just believe that this is gonna go well. Truly, like just be like, I know my 15, I know what it is, I know how I'm gonna do, I know where I'm gonna put things, and even then, I build my set in a way that it's not like a to B to C to D to E. It's like all just a bunch of stuff where it's like kind of like a one of those like thought clouds where you have like the
Okay.
center thing, everything kind of branches out from there. Where I can start here and then be like, I can go here, but then this one also connects down here, so that I can go across. Like it all, I can kind of weave through my own set pretty well.
Yeah.
Point where it's all cohesive and it makes sense. And I can like go back to stuff and be like, like versus like, yeah. So one set of mine will be similar to another, but they're not ever the exact same.
Okay.
Where I'll like um be like, oh, this joke A will be at the start, and then the next set I'll be like, joke A can go later
Okay.
because now I'm really having fun with like jokes C, D, and E or whatever. And then I can be like, oh, and as I mentioned before, like this thing happens, so then that's why, and then like all of a sudden it flows where it feels like I was never off track. It feels
Yeah.
like it was all purposeful, but really I'm kind of just vibing with it the whole time.
How
Yeah.
how great is that high when you're getting people to laugh?
I would say off the stuff that I know works, it's pretty fun. I would say the best feeling is when I see a joke that I really like and then gets a groan from the audience, and I'm like, guys, you don't understand. I love that. Like I'll say a joke where I'm like, oh yeah, this is good, and then somebody will like, and then the audience just go, ah, and I'm like, guys, you don't understand. Like, okay, so I can give you an example. Um, so this past summer, I've never met my dad,
Okay.
and my mom got engaged to him. I've never met my dad.
Recently?
Yeah, in May. In May they
Okay.
got engaged. In May they got engaged, and then in August they called it off. And so I found out the reason why, and this is a joke I do on stage. The reason why they called off the wedding was because my dad was hitting my mom.
Okay.
Then it's very dark, but there's a silver lining that afterward, my mom reached out to me and said, Jacob, I left your father. Um, I want to establish a relationship with you. I'm sorry for your childhood. I want to reconcile. And my first thought was like, geez, my dad really knocked some sense into my mom. And that will get like, yeah, that'll get some people groaning in the audience. But then
That's
everybody else,
fantastic. Was that one of your clips?
that
Uh,
was one of my clips.
okay.
No, actually, no. That joke is not one of my clips.
No.
That joke I have not yet clipped. I have another joke about it, but it goes in a different angle, and
Okay.
that's and so that's the thing is that like I have a lot of jokes where I can like go from one part to the other to a different part to another. So
Yeah.
like,
More of a
um,
left hook.
yeah. So yeah. Nice, nice. That joke, just like my dad, does hit hard. I wrote that joke probably like that's real, and I just
Yeah.
literally I was told that, and then I just immediately that was my first thought. I'm not kidding. That was my first thought, and I like put my hands on my desk and I went, "That's the funniest thing I've ever said." and and so yeah, that joke is like one where it'll get a groan, but it'll also get a laugh. And as
Yeah.
I sit on stage, I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
So there's I'll only do this once, and that's just because I my wife just walked past me, and there's a joke that I keep on trying to tell her, and it's just a premise that I think is hilarious.
Okay.
But I just want her to hear me tell it because she's gonna just be like, "You're an idiot." Um, so I go to the zoo with my daughter a lot,
Mhm.
and there's always these animals in cages, but there's some birds that are always flying around. So I think it's just wild that there's a pigeon that's hanging out with like a polar bear and then a rhino and then a goat. And he goes back and he's talking to his buddies about it, and they're like, fucking Bob's got nothing. More or less the premise. I think it's just really funny. The birds are talking to each other and they just don't believe the friend that's just like, yeah, I saw all these different types of animals.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. I see. Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna say that I had there was a, and I'm gonna do what I said earlier. I believe there was a disconnect where I didn't exactly know what I didn't know that we were in the pigeon's point of view,
Gotcha.
and that like establishing like imagine the pigeon goes back to his buddies,
Okay.
like that is something that not saying to do that exactly, but that like that is where like you're telling the audience we are now in the perspective of this character. We are
Okay.
now in the thinking about this, or like like something like that, where like that saying imagine the pigeon goes back to his buddies, is that then you can go into the act of like the pigeon walks up to his friend like, yo dude, it's crazy what you see. Oh, like that's where you can go into that and whatnot. I do think the fact of that the idea that a pigeon coming along to the zoo and being like, "What the fuck?" and like just like seeing so many different other animals, it's going, "Okay, okay, new plan, new day entirely." Like, because seeing like a lion and a bear and like tiger, and then just going, "Okay, they just got crazy, dude," and like I thought I was just like hunting for like corn, and now I have to move. I didn't know this was gonna happen. Um, so like that, yeah, that's a very funny idea to me of just a pigeon coming across a zoo and being like thrown entirely. Of just
That makes
yeah,
me so happy. That's wonderful. My heart's racing. My heart's racing.
yeah.
Woo! All right. So as far as life goes now, do you look at it at a 5 year perspective where we're getting a new job? How do things look for you? Obviously, very positive outlook on life, but how do you personally decide
Yeah.
what's going on next?
So right now the plan is get job, and then from there it's save money, move into a new place, like be closer to like the comedy scene, like really try to push myself in comedy. I don't have a 5 year plan of like, all right, in 5 years, I'm gonna be like on this show in like
Right.
whatever, like that might actually be like helpful to kind of like guide myself a bit. But right now, the plan is kind of just like focus on traveling to other scenes and doing comedy there
Okay.
and building kind of a name for myself through that. Also, this year, I kind of paused due to the breakup. I was just dealing with a lot of emotions, but like I I was posting a clip a week for the beginning of the year, and that was actually very beneficial because one, I was writing more. I was like putting myself in this routine of like getting stuff done, but then also some of the clips were doing very well
Yeah.
online. And that's just like naturally building a name for myself online. Where I see myself finding the most success within comedy is through online, is
Okay.
through like building a name for myself online. And then from there, trying to transition it to ticket sales to then like being able to tour clubs and go up and just be a full-time comedian. So I guess in 5 years, I would like to be Um, and I'm hoping to be a like full-time touring comedian.
Yeah.
Whether that's like opening for a bigger act or just being able to like headline a club on my own and stuff like that. If I need to still have a like um full-time job in order to supplement that, that's also understandable because it takes a long time to make it in comedy. But at that point, I'll be 33 years old and I'll be 13 years into comedy. So I'm hoping that I'll be, or yeah, I'll, no, I'll be at 12 years into comedy. And so I'll like hopefully be like a much more rock solid, like just
Yeah.
crush. That's my goal is to just be able to support myself through stand up and just being funny,
Yeah.
or even then being a writer on a show, like whatever kind of comes my way. Just
Is that what the job interview was for?
no, the job interview is for data analytics.
Okay.
I'm a data analyst on the as like a day job. And then that's where which I mean actually kind of helps because then I can like look at like analytics online for
Yeah.
my account and then be like, oh, I understand what this means, you know?
Did,
Um
does data analytics give you any good material for comedy? Is there, can you draw anything from that?
that okay, it doesn't give me good material for comedy, but the people I worked with and for previously can. I haven't like used anything yet, but like I used to work for a company where it was an advertising agency and all of our clients were evangelical Christian companies. So like there's like the Noah's Ark in Kentucky, there's Museum of the Bible, and like me, I'm like a stand-up comedian who goes on stage and says like curse words and cum and jizz and stuff. So then like I'm like, they can't see this at all. So then like I come into the office and they're like, hey Jacob, how was your weekend? And I was like, it was good. Don't ask me any more questions. Like I'm just, yeah, like I kept that secret from them entirely. So like working for them was like very silly. And then I would come into the office and I remember in our office we had a fully stacked, fully loaded bar. And I was like, oh
Alcohol?
yeah, alcohol. Yeah. And then I was like, is this for when clients come in? And they're like, no, that's for us. We're like the party company. Because we had like a sister company and a parent company, and we were known as the party one.
Yeah.
So like literally, like on a if like executives came in and stuff like that, we'd be sitting in a 4:30 meeting and people would be making margaritas, stuff like that, and then just be like, and literally my coworkers would go to the club together. Like it was crazy. But then they'd come in and they'd be like, all right, we need to get these Christian moms tickets, you know, like so it's like
What's the church advertising for? They're looking for more people to show up to mass, or don't like what are they advertising for?
So we weren't advertising for churches. We were advertising for like companies that are based in faith.
Gotcha.
So like Hillsdale College is a graduate school that is all about like Christian students. Like they want like you have to take like a test of faith in order to like enroll basically. Or there was another company which was uh, CHM, which was Christian Healthcare Ministries, and you have to pledge like an oath of faith in order to join. And what it is that you pay a monthly premium to the company, and then what happens is that when you make a request for healthcare,
Yeah.
the company will like
They pray
give
on it. Sorry.
yeah, so they will they'll pray on it and then they'll be like bless him and then that's it. You just get yeah. But like they'll give you like money to go to a doctor. And but the thing is that that money comes from everyone else also paying a monthly amount every month and that you are drawing from that amount to then like basically it's like yeah, that like you are like drawing from how much everybody else is paying a month,
Yeah.
right? So in a way, when I worked there, it was explained to me that like my company explained it to me of like, yeah, it's universal healthcare, but just for this one Christian company. And I
Right.
was like, wild that that's the statement that it's like that they're if you were to ask them individually, do you like universal healthcare? They'd be like, no. And they'd be like, what about universal healthcare for just Christians? And they'd be like, perfect. Like it's so
I've definitely seen that one before, and I'm like, what happens when like someone has a like really high bill, do they have enough members where that happens, or they just cut you off? Or it seemed like
It's
very interesting. Uh,
yeah, that's where I'm not too intricate in their details, but basically, yeah, like they just pay that bill basically.
nice.
So it's like yeah, so I don't know too much exactly. I was kind of just like their data was separate from us. They were our client, so I didn't have
Yeah,
to
for
consider.
sure. So
But
before we close things up, as far as following you and things of that nature, how do they follow you on social media?
okay, so to follow me on social media, just go to Jacob Chalk Comedy on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. To follow me in real life, you can just like go to the Laughing Skull Lounge and then follow me to my car and then drive after me. That's fine. You just see me going to open mics. But yeah, so that's what anybody can do as well. I have anything upcoming? I don't have anything super upcoming right now. But yeah, just Instagram usually is the best that I'm on there probably the most, and that's like
Yeah.
my largest following there. So yeah, Jacob Chalk Comedy.
Wonderful. And then we'll finish up with the last two questions. What's your definition of health? Not necessarily the dictionary definition, but what is health to you?
Health to me is just like yeah, just like feeling strong and confident because like I think both mentally and physically. Like for example, health wise, if your like knee is bad, you're not going to have confidence in your knee, right?
Mm.
So like you have an unhealthy knee, so you're just not going to have confidence in it, right? So for me, it's just purely like I feel good and everything feels good, and I feel like I can like conquer the world in a way, both physically and mentally, and those go so hand in hand so easily. Um,
I've had, I think, around 160 people I've asked that question to. It's generally the same idea, but that was one of the best explanations. The confidence in the knee. I think that was very good.
I do talking, man. I'm good at talking. If
Uh,
I'm not the number one answer on this podcast, then that's on me, you know?
and then what's something in your life that you think people listening to the podcast will be able to take away as a positive?
Uh yeah, I guess just yeah, just like try to treat yourself as best you can. Just be a partner to yourself. Truly, that's what I'm learning. And I think first step is to forgive yourself for anything you've done. You could have done some awful things, man. I mean, we've all made mistakes, but yeah, just forgive yourself and just try to accept that, just because you know what, a really good lesson that I was taught surprisingly by my freshman year health teacher who was also a pastor. He was teaching us about sex ed of all things. Crazy that like this was the lesson that was really solid. Most of his lessons were like teaching about abstinence and such, but he had one that really stuck with me where he asked a student, he was like, does anybody here have $1? And this girl was like, I do. And he like goes, give me the dollar. And he takes the dollar. And he just leaves. No, he didn't leave. That'd be so funny if he did that. That'd be awesome. But no, he takes the dollar and he goes, how much is this dollar worth? And everybody in the class goes, $1. And then he crumples it up and just like throws it on the ground. And he's like, how much is it worth now? And they're like, $1. And he goes, exactly. Like that no matter what you go through or what you've done or what you've, been, part of or anything like that, like whatever it is, like whatever somebody else has done to you, no matter the damage you have received or have done, is that your value is and has always been the same.
Okay.
And that is like something that I've really uh been learning of that like the that I wasn't great as a kid and then got worse and then I'm getting better, or that I wasn't a bad kid and now I'm a good adult. It was that I was always good. I've always been good. And that like basically yeah, challenging those negative things that have always been kind of instilled within me and instilled by myself. And so understanding that nothing can change your value because it's always been exactly what it was, which was worth it and enough.
Two bangers right at the end. Love it. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
This episode is brought to you by Vital Athlete. This is my first sponsor, guys. I've been using them for the last 6 months. I stopped using regular painkillers about 10 years ago due to the negative effects on your liver and kidneys. Vital Athlete understands this, and they've created a CBD roll-on for pain and injury relief. The Freeze roll-on gives you fast-acting relief right where you need it so you can keep going. If you need to get the most out of every workout, then Vital Athlete is for you.